The digital assets market has grown significantly in recent years. Millions of people globally, including 16% of adult Americans, have purchased digital assets, which reached a market capitalization of $3 trillion globally last November. Digital assets present potential opportunities to reinforce U.S. leadership in the global financial system and remain at the technological frontier, but they also pose real risks as evidenced by recent events in crypto markets. The May crash of the so-called stablecoin and the subsequent wave of insolvencies wiped out over $600 billion of investor and consumer funds. Yeah, how much did oh my goodness. How much was wiped out from the stock market? And how much of that was directly related to the White House's handling of the COVID pandemic, the lockdowns, and the subsequent supply shortages and interactions with China, etc.? How much of this is your fault and not actually the cryptocurrency industry's fault? That's my question. Right? If you're gonna try to throw that onto all cryptocurrency, come on, let's talk about everything, right? President Biden's March 9th executive order on ensuring responsible development of digital assets outlined the first whole of government approach to addressing the risks and harnessing the potential benefits of digital assets and their underlying technology. Over the past 6 months, agencies across the government have worked together to develop frameworks and policy recommendations that advance the 6 key priorities identified in the EO: consumer and investor protection, promoting financial stability, countering illicit finance, U.S. leadership in global financial system, and economic competitiveness, financial inclusion, and responsible innovation. The 9 reports submitted to the president to date, consistent with the EO's deadline, reflect the input and expertise of diverse stakeholders across the government, industry, academia, and civil society. Together, they articulate a clear framework for responsible digital asset development and pave the way for further action at home and abroad. The reports call on agencies to promote innovation by kickstarting private sector research and development and helping cutting-edge U.S. firms find footholds in global markets. At the same time, they call for measures to mitigate the downside risks, like increased enforcement of existing laws and the creation of common sense I hate that term, common sense efficiency standards for cryptocurrency mining. Anytime they use the term common sense, you can pretty much go ahead and say that it's utilizing zero common sense. As we've seen, with everything else that they've regulated in the past. I do not like the term common sense anytime the U.S. government and the White House decide to utilize it. Recognizing the potential benefits and risks of the U.S. central bank digital currency, the reports encourage the Federal Reserve to continue its ongoing CBDC research, experimentation, and evaluation, and call for the creation of a Treasury-led interagency working group to support the Federal Reserve's efforts. Yes, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, we now have a central bank digital currency, pretty much more or less with the U.S. being confirmed. You need to realize that this is a huge step away in the incorrect direction for what Bitcoin was supposed to do, which was remove the interference of banks and governments. Basically, if you have a CBDC, you are going to remove banks, and it's just going to be the government in control. You've now gone from 2 entities to 1 entity controlling the entire economy, right? I mean, to be frank, the Fed kind of controls the entire economy to a certain extent, but at least you kind of had this intermediary of banks. If that goes away, you no longer have that, right? And it gets extremely sketchy. Digital assets pose meaningful risks for consumers, investors, and businesses. Prices of those assets can be highly volatile. The current global market capitalization of cryptocurrencies is approximately 1/3 of the November 2021 peak. Still, sellers commonly mislead consumers about digital assets, features, and expected returns, and non-compliance with applicable laws and regulations remain widespread. One study found that almost 1/4 of digital coin offerings had disclosure or transparency problems, like plagiarized documents or false promises of guaranteed returns. Outright fraud, Scams and theft in digital asset markets are on the rise, and according to the FBI statistics, reported monetary losses from digital asset scams were nearly 600% higher in 2021 than the year before. Since taking office, the Biden-Harris administration and independent regulators have worked to protect consumers and ensure fair play in digital asset markets by issuing guidance, increasing enforcement resources, and aggressively pursuing fraudulent actors. As outlined in the reports released today, the administration plans to take the following additional steps. Now, I do want to make this extremely clear. Before you tell me that this is not a Biden-Harris decision, I wanted to make it clear that they have claimed this as all their work, okay? So as we get into this, they have claimed this. Biden-Harris administration has claimed all of this. You cannot tell me that they did not claim this, and if you disagree with it, you should not vote for them, and that is all I want to say, okay? If you agree with them, then by all means go ahead and vote for them. But don't tell me it's not their decision. Don't tell me that this is not something they support, because it is clear that they have decided to claim this, okay? So let's not play this stupid game in the chat and on Twitter and all this of like, every side's bad and this is blah, blah, blah. Look, if we're talking about cryptocurrency and the policies surrounding it, it's clear what is happening here, okay? I just don't want to hear it anymore. The reports encourage regulators like the Securities and Exchange Commission and Commodity Futures Trading Commission, consistent with their mandates, to aggressively pursue investigations and enforcement actions against unlawful practices in the digital asset space. So you'll have two governing bodies at this point, the SEC and the CFTC. Now, my understanding here is that the SEC specifically will be for proof of stake coins, so securities. So we're talking about Ethereum, Solana, and the likes. And your CFTC will be governing proof of work coins, Bitcoin, Ergo, Dogecoin, Litecoin, and the likes, right? So these are the two governing bodies and what they will govern. Best that I can tell as far as everything's been laid out to this point, okay? The reports encourage Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, and Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. The FTC won't let me be or let me be me, so let me see. Tried to shut me down on the YTV, but it feels so empty without me. To redouble their efforts to monitor consumer complaints and to enforce against unfair, deceptive, or abusive practices. The reports encourage agencies to issue guidance and rules to address current and emergent risks in the digital asset ecosystem. Regulatory and law enforcement agencies are also urged to collaborate to address acute digital asset risks facing consumers, investors, and businesses. In addition, agencies are encouraged to share data on consumer complaints regarding digital assets, ensuring each agency activities are maximally effective. The Financial Literacy Education Commission, the FLEC, will lead public awareness efforts to help consumers understand the risks involved with digital assets and identify common fraudulent practices and learn how to report misconduct. Of course, this could be influenced to essentially end up being propaganda, but we'll have to see what they decide to do with it. Today, traditional finance leaves too many behind. Roughly 7 million Americans have no bank account. Another 24 million rely on costly non-bank services like check cashing and money orders for everyday needs. And for those who do use banks, paying with traditional financial infrastructure can be costly and slow, particularly for cross-border payments. The digital economy should work for all Americans. That means developing financial services that are secure, reliable, affordable, and accessible to all. To make payments more efficient, the Federal Reserve has planned a 2023 launch of the FedNow. We talked about FedNow not too long ago. This is where we start to get one step closer to a CBDC. One step closer to the edge, and I'm about to break. It's popped into my head. Everything you say to me. Oh, an instantaneous 24/7 interbank clearing system that will further the advance of nationwide infrastructure for instant payments alongside the clearinghouse real-time payment system. A CBDC is so close, it is absolutely terrifying, guys. We are so close to basically going in the completely opposite direction of what cryptocurrency was supposed to do. And I don't know how to fight it, other than to actually continue to do this show and ask you guys to share this with everybody so they are aware of what's happening. We are talking about a complete control of all of your finances by the federal government. Okay? If that's not terrifying to you, I don't know what to say. I mean, I guess cool. But some digital assets could help facilitate faster payments and make financial services more accessible, but more work is needed to ensure they truly benefit underserved consumers and do not lead to predatory financial practices. To promote safe and affordable financial services for all, the administration plans to take the following steps. Agencies will encourage the adoption of instant payment systems like FedNow. This is where that propaganda company comes into play. So you're going to have basically the Financial Literacy Education Commission pushing the propaganda for the FedNow. This is pretty much what you can say. So they're going to be paying these guys a ton of money from the government to push FedNow. This is pretty much exactly how this is going to play out, right? By supporting the development and use of innovative technologies by payment providers to increase access to instant payments and using instant payment systems for their own transactions where appropriate. For example, in the context of distribution of disaster, emergency, or other government to consumer payments. We already kind of knew they had access to our government or our bank accounts when they decided to put in the Emergency Act and the lockdowns and started just dealing out money to people into their bank accounts. What did this do too? Like if we talk about like lockdowns and everybody working from home, that sort of thing, and the shutdown of small businesses, what ended up happening was we just bolstered like companies like Amazon, and now Amazon controls Ethereum. Like this is wild. Like all the connections are absolutely insane. You start putting it 2 and 2 together and you feel like a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist with a big old pin wall of like, okay, Ethereum going to Amazon, lockdowns going to Amazon, all of the money from the lockdowns going to Amazon, because effectively the government basically just gave everybody money to basically spend at Amazon. It's wild, bro. And so they're just going to make it even easier for them to basically distribute based on however they feel is appropriate, emergency and government funds and all of that. In the case that we have some sort of lockdowns again. The president will consider agency recommendations to create a federal framework to regulate non-bank payment providers. Agencies will prioritize efforts to improve the efficiency of cross-border payments by working to align global payment practices, regulations, and supervision protocols while exploring new multilateral platforms that integrate instant payment systems. Yeah, they're going to look at Ethereum is what they're going to look at. The National Science Foundation, the NSF, will back research in technical and socio-technical disciplines and behavioral economies to ensure that digital asset ecosystems are designed to be usable, inclusive, equitable, and accessible by all. I mean, on the surface, that sounds great, right? But we read between the lines here. Digital assets and the mainstream financial system are becoming increasingly intertwined, creating channels for turmoil to have spillover effects. Stablecoins in particular could create disruptive runs if not paired with appropriate regulation. And this is where we get into the crux of the issues, because if we look at Argentina, for example, most recently, stablecoins were utilized by the lower class and poor, the lower and middle class to participate in protecting their financial position without access to, an international bank. And that is because in Argentina, to have access to an international bank where you could put your money into a U.S. reserve currency, you had to be rich. And what does stablecoins do? They allow the poor to participate in the same asset protection that the rich have. So you can't have that going on. Clearly, the UN, like we talked about previously, has already said that we can't allow these third world countries to have access to stable coins because no, if you're a poor country, no, you can't protect your assets in the same way that the rich people can, okay? That's not allowed. So we got to regulate the stable coins. We can't allow the poor people to protect their assets like the rich people can't have it. None of it. Let's regulate it. Get it out of here. Shut the stable coins down. Don't allow poor people to participate in the things that we are allowed to participate in, because then they'll see that we've just been playing a game and screwing them over from the very beginning. The potential for instability was illustrated in May 2022 by the crash of the so-called stablecoin Terra USD. Of course they're going to use Terra USD. Of course they're going to use it to scare you. And the subsequent wave of insolvencies that erased nearly $600 billion in wealth. In October, the Financial Stability Oversight Council will publish a report discussing digital assets, financial stability risks, identifying related regulatory gaps, and making additional recommendations to foster financial stability. The Biden-Harris administration has long recognized the need for regulation to address digital asset stability risks. For example, in 2021, the president's working group on financial markets recommended steps for Congress and regulators to make stablecoins safer. Building on this work, the administration plans to take additional following steps. The Treasury will work with financial institutions to bolster their capacity to identify and mitigate cyber vulnerabilities by sharing information and promoting a wide range of data sets and analytical tools. Basically, government overreach to the furthest extent within digital assets is what's coming here. The Treasury will work with other agencies to identify, track, and analyze emerging strategic risks that relate to digital asset markets. It will also collaborate on identifying such risks with U.S. allies, including through international organizations like the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and the Financial Stability Board, the FSB. Advancing responsible innovation. U.S. companies led the world in innovation. Digital asset firms are no exception. As of 2022, the United States is home to roughly half of the world's 100 most valuable financial technology companies, many of which trade in digital asset services. The U.S. government has long played a critical role in priming responsible private sector innovation. It sponsors cutting-edge research, helps firms compete globally, and assists them with compliance and works with them to mitigate harmful side effects of technological advancement. In keeping with this tradition, the administration plans to take the following steps to foster responsible digital asset innovation. The Office of Science and Technology Policy, OSTP, and NSF will develop a digital assets research and development agenda to kickstart fundamental research on topics such as next-generation cryptography, transaction programmability, Ethereum, cybersecurity and privacy protections, and ways to mitigate the environmental impacts of digital assets. This is where we get into the fact that it is really looking like, from a proof of work standpoint, if the cryptocurrency mining market wasn't depressing enough, well, you may also just be not legally allowed to mine cryptocurrency here in the near future. It will also continue to support research that translates technological breakthroughs into market-ready products. Additionally, NSF will back social sciences and education research that develops methods of informing, educating, and training diverse groups of stakeholders on safe and responsible digital asset use. The Treasury and financial regulators are encouraged to, as appropriate, provide innovative U.S. firms developing new financial technologies with regulatory guidance, best practices, sharing, and technical assistance through things like Tech Experience and Innovation Hours. The Department of Energy Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and other agencies will consider further tracking digital assets' environmental impacts, developing performance standards as appropriate, and providing local authorities with tools, resources, and expertise to mitigate environmental harms. Powering crypto assets can take a large amount of electricity, which can emit greenhouse gases, strain electricity grids, and harm some local communities with noise and water pollution. Opportunities exist to align and develop the development of digital assets with transitioning to a net zero emissions economy and improving environmental justice. Because why? Because if you get everybody to move to proof of stake and you have them on your AWS services that you have your little dirty hands into, you control the currency. That is why this is happening. Now, we could say, sure, there is environmental impacts, but that's a very easy counter because there are incentives. Incentives are what drive innovation. What is the incentive for a cryptocurrency miner? An incentive for a cryptocurrency miner is to reduce their power cost. What reduces power cost? Well, renewable energy reduces power cost. The reduction of basically energy waste reduces power cost for cryptocurrency miners. So we know for a fact that cryptocurrency miners are directly incentivized to reduce energy consumption and move energy consumption in the direction of renewables because the incentives are in place there. Therefore, we can reasonably assert that the entire lie that, it is impactful on the environment more than the private jets that the people that wrote this are flying around in is absolute BS. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This entire play is to put cryptocurrency in a position that is controlled by the U.S. government. The Department of Commerce will examine establishing a standing forum to convene federal agencies, industry, academics, and civil society to exchange knowledge and ideas that could inform federal regulations, standards, coordinating activities, technical assistance, and research support. Today, global standard-setting bodies are establishing policies, guidance, and regulatory recommendations for digital assets. The United States is working actively with its partners to set out these policies in line with our goals and values, while also reinforcing the United States' role in the global financial system. Similarly, the United States has a very valuable opportunity to partner with countries still developing their digital assets ecosystem, helping ensure that countries' financial, legal, and technological infrastructures respect core values, including data privacy, financial stability, and human rights. What they really mean by this is that they want to be able to regulate those who have access to US dollar-backed stablecoins, right? This is what we've seen as a push from the UN. The US wants to basically, as opposed to doing what they did in Afghanistan and Iraq, which is we're going to go, enforce freedom by killing you. They're going to enforce freedom by removing your financial stability. Frankly, right? That is what this is at the end of the day. And, I have, growing up, considered myself a patriot, but I have to say that when I see stuff like this, I'll call it out for what it is, okay? To reinforce U.S. financial leadership and uphold U.S. values in global digital asset markets, the administration will take the following steps outlined in the framework for international engagement released by the Treasury Department earlier this summer. U.S. agencies will leverage U.S. positions in international organizations to message U.S. values related to digital assets. U.S. agencies will also continue and expand their leadership roles on digital assets work at international organizations and standard-setting bodies, such as the G7, the G20, the OECD, the FSB, the Financial Action Task Force, and the International Organization for Standardization. Agencies will promote standards, regulations, and frameworks that reflect values like data privacy, free and efficient markets, financial stability, consumer protection, robust law enforcement, and environmental sustainability. Always with the environmental sustainability, because how do you remove freedom from cryptocurrency? You remove proof of work. The State Department, the Department of Justice, DOJ, and other U.S. enforcement agencies will increase collaboration with and assistance to partner agencies in foreign countries through global enforcement bodies like the Egmont Group, bilateral information sharing, and capacity building. I'm not familiar with the Edgemont Group. Maybe you guys can let me know. The State Department, Treasury, USAID, and other agencies will explore further technical assistance to developing countries building out digital asset infrastructure and services. As appropriate, this assistance may include technical assistance on legal and regulatory frameworks, evidence gathering and knowledge sharing on the impacts, risks, and opportunities of digital assets. The Department of Commerce will help cutting-edge U.S. financial technology and digital asset firms find a foothold in global markets for their products. It's not enough. Once again, I want to say this very clearly to my international audience. You need to pay attention to what the U.S. is doing here, okay? This is not an effect of just U.S. citizens. This is an effect on the international community as a whole, right? And if you think the U.S. government doesn't have significant sway when it comes to currency, you're kidding yourself. The global economy is run right now by the U.S. dollar. The United States has been a leader in applying its anti-money laundering and counterfeiting the financing of terrorism framework in the digital asset ecosystem. It has published relevant guidance, engaged in regular public-private dialogue, used its enforcement tools, and led in setting international AML and CFT standards. While our efforts have strengthened the U.S. financial system, digital assets, some of which are pseudonymous, there we go, and can be transferred without a financial intermediary, have been exploited by bad actors to launder illicit proceeds. What do they want to stop you from doing? They want to stop you from transferring digital assets without a financial intermediary, which is the pure original purpose of cryptocurrency, okay? They want to strip out the original purpose of cryptocurrency. They are telling us that right now. The Biden-Harris administration is specifically stating that they want to strip out the principles of cryptocurrency from cryptocurrency. I want to make that extremely clear here. They are saying it. It's a bold face, like straight up in your, it's bold and straight up in your face is what I want to say, okay? For example, digital assets have facilitated the rise of ransomware, cyber criminals, narcotic sales, and money laundering for drug trafficking organizations, and funding of activities of rogue regimes, as was the case in the recent thefts of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea affiliated Lazarus Group. It is in the national interest to mitigate these risks through regulation, oversight, law enforcement action, and the use of our United States government authorities. To fight the illicit use of digital assets more effectively, the administration plans to take the following steps. The president will evaluate whether to call upon Congress to amend the Bank Secrecy Act, anti-tip-off statutes, and laws against unlicensed money transmitting to apply explicitly to digital asset service providers, including digital asset exchange and non-fungible token platforms. He will also consider urging Congress to raise the penalties for unlicensed money transmitting to match the penalties for similar crimes under other money laundering statutes, and to amend relevant federal statutes to let the Department of Justice prosecute digital asset crimes in any jurisdiction where a victim of those crimes is found. Wow. So what do you have here? And this is really where we get into it, right? What we've seen is Texas and Florida proposing essentially state laws, changing to the state amendment in Texas, right? State constitution in Texas to basically prevent the overreach of government, not allowing its citizens to hold cryptocurrency. Now, the federal government is coming out and saying, you know, we're going to take this over essentially, and we're going to make sure that our federal arm can reach into everything. This is not dissimilar to basically the drug war, right? This is not dissimilar to what the federal government and its agencies were doing to weed farms in California, okay? And so if you are, you know, if I get it, right? Like I'm of the position of, you know, I think that like that was wrong, right? I also think this is wrong, right? I'm more of libertarian as far as that goes. Logically consistent, I suppose. But I understand a lot of you may be logically inconsistent. You may be pro-drug, but, you know, anti-financial freedom. And I get that. Maybe that is you. But you need to start looking at those principles again and start thinking about it, because this is what's happening. This is the exact same thing they do every single time, right? And the states are going to try to protect you, some of them. Hopefully you're in a state that tries to protect you from this. The United States will continue to monitor the development of digital asset sector and its associated illicit financing risks to identify any gaps in our legal, regulatory, and supervisory regimes. As part of this effort, Treasury will complete an illicit finance risk assessment on decentralized finance by the end of February 2023. So we're going to get more information, obviously, probably on DeFi in February, and then we'll get more information on NFTs in July. Relevant departments and agencies will continue to expose and disrupt illicit actors and address the abuse of digital assets. Such actions will hold cyber criminals and other malign actors responsible for their illicit activity and identify nodes in the ecosystem that pose national security risks. Well, you know, how do you identify and shut down nodes? I guess you have all the nodes run on a system like AWS that you have access to controlling. Wow, they literally here have stated that they will identify nodes in the ecosystem that pose national security risk. Guys, you also got to stop supporting pools and services that support sanctions. I'm sorry, but you have to stop supporting FlexPool. You have to stop supporting Ethermine. These are things that have to be done now. Treasury will enhance dialogue with the private sector to ensure that firms understanding existing obligations and illicit financing risks associated with digital assets share information and encourage the use of emerging technologies to comply with obligations. This will be supported by a request for comment published to the Federal Register for input on several items related to AML and CFT. Informing the above recommendations, the Treasury, DOJ, FBI, DHS, and NSF drafted risk assessments to provide the administration with a comprehensive view of digital assets' illicit finance risks. The CFPB, an independent agency, also voluntarily provided information to the administration as to risks arising from digital assets. The risks that agencies highlight include, but are not limited to, money laundering, terrorist financing, hacks that result in loss of funds, and fragilities, common practices, and fast-changing technology that may present vulnerabilities for misuse. A US CBDC. Are you guys ready to get into the central bank digital currency for the US dollar? Here it comes. You can't participate in any other digital assets, okay? I just want to make that clear. They're too dangerous for you. They're too dangerous for you. The government's smart. They will tell you what to do with your money. And, you know, it's going to be okay. Just listen to them. You know, they've been correct through the entire pandemic. Very trustworthy. Very, very trustworthy. The bestest of peoples. The smartest of peoples. So just trust them, okay? A US CBDC, a digital form of the US dollar, has the potential to offer significant benefits. It could enable a payment system that is more efficient, provides a foundation for further technological innovation, facilitates faster cross-border transactions, and is environmentally sustainable. Of course. It could promote financial inclusion and equity by enabling access for a broad set of consumers. In addition, it could foster economic growth and stability, protect against cyber and operational risks, safeguard the privacy of sensitive data, and minimize risks of illicit financial transactions. A potential U.S. CBDC could also help preserve U.S. global financial leadership and support the effectiveness of sanctions. Because, of course, what is this really about? They're telling you. Yes, they're hiding it in all these other words. They want to say it helps with financial inclusion because they'll send the poor people some bailouts here and there when they inevitably lock them down and shut down their businesses, right? They'll send you some bailouts here and there. They'll financially include you, to a certain extent. You'll be able to eat. You'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. You'll be able to eat. We'll control it all. But what are they really telling you here, right? You don't even have to read between the lines here because they tell you specifically why they want to do this. They want to promote the effectiveness of sanctions. And sanctions at the end of the day only hurt the individual. I don't care what anybody says. I'm against it, right? You do not sanction a people and punish the individual because you have a quarrel with the government. But a CBDC could also have unintended consequences, including runs to CBDC in times of stress. What do they mean by that? Well, that runs on the banks, right? They don't want people to basically come in and start pulling out all their CBDC. So I guess we'll see how they're going to mitigate that. Recognizing the possibility of a U.S. CBDC, the administration has developed policy objectives for a U.S. CBDC system, which reflect the federal government's priorities for a potential U.S. CBDC. These objectives flesh out the goals outlined for a CBDC in the EOA U.S. CBDC system. If implemented, should protect consumers, promote economic growth, improve payment systems, provide interoperability with other platforms like, Ethereum, advance financial inclusion, protect national security, respect human rights, and align with democratic values. But further research and development on the technology that would support a U.S. CBDC is needed. The administration encourages the Federal Reserve to continue its ongoing CBDC research, experimentation, and evaluation. To support the Federal Reserve efforts and to advance other work on a potential U.S. CBDC, the Treasury will lead an interagency working group to consider the potential implications of a U.S. CBDC, leverage cross-government technical expertise, and share information with partners. The leadership of the Federal Reserve, the National Economic Council, and the National Security Council, the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and the Treasury Department will meet regularly to discuss the working group's progress and share updates on the CBD. Oh, yes, it's not actually CBDC. It's just CBD extract, boys. Don't worry about it. The WhiteHouse.gov has finally admitted that a CBDC is a bad idea at the end of this statement. It is actually CBD. We've been all confused. It's fine. Legalize weed and we're good to go. At least they had a typo that we had fun with at the end of that. That's all she wrote, boys. Please share this particular stream out. I wish we had the 1,500 concurrent viewers that we had yesterday. I wish this was more widespread. I wish people were more aware and more awake to what is happening right now. Remember, if you look at this, sure, you can say I got a tinfoil hat on and I'm throwing up a whiteboard and I'm making the connections between centralizing Ethereum, putting the control of Ethereum under the US government, and then coming out and regulating proof of work currencies, and then creating a CBDC that will tie in with Ethereum. Sure, I could be that crazy guy, conspiracy theorist or whatever, but I don't know. At the end of the day, they're pretty clearly telling me exactly what they're going to do, and I'm not for it. I'm just not for it. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. You can check out the full episode here or more crypto content down here. Also, I'd like you to check out my locals page at sonofatech.locals.com where you can become a member for free or choose to be a $5 a month supporter that unlocks additional content.